WOTW HD2 Windermere, Bud 94.1. From the attorneys Justin Clark and Associates YouHavePower.com studios, this is Behind the Law with attorney Justin Clark.
And welcome to the program, and thank you for joining me for another edition of Behind the Law with me, attorney Justin Clark. Thank you for spending some of your weekend here with me on our favorite radio station, Bud 94.1. We're here to answer any legal question that you may have. Anything from accident to zoning, dial up the phones 321-282-1055. Plenty of information on the website, www.youhavepower.com. You can watch this show live or any other show on Facebook or any social media platform at ATTY Justin Clark. 321-282-1055. YouHavePower.com. Joining me as always to my right here in the Bud 94.1 studio is Orlando radio legend Mick Dolan. Mick, what's up, buddy? How are you?
I'm great.
Thank you for spending another hour with me. I always appreciate it. You know, the show just wouldn't be the same without you.
Well,
I mean, what would we do? What would I talk about? It would be like walking in the studio naked, really.
It would probably go a lot faster.
I don't know about that.
I mean, serious.
And pushing the buttons, making sure we go on the air from next door, our sister station, 103.1 The Wolf. It's Skid. He's the afternoon guy. What's up, Skid?
I am doing fabulous there, Justin.
Thanks, pal. Thanks for being here.
Well, thank you.
You always brighten my week when I see you.
That's what kind of week he's had.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's miserable. Great.
Had to have been a horrible week. Jeez.
321-282-1055. You know, it struck me the other day that we talk about a bunch of legal things on the show, but we oftentimes circle back around to homeowners associations. Those conversations don't always go well. You know, homeowners associations are one of these, you love
Bad
them,
guys.
you need them, and then you fight with them, and then it's also this weird dichotomy of these are our neighbors, but then we're also sort of having a fight with them. And I've always told you, we've talked about foreclosure a million times, Mick, on this show, and I always say, look, if the bank files foreclosure against you, if you hire a lawyer, you're probably going to get a year or two. I mean, it's just a no-brainer. Any sort of lawyer worth anything can get you a year or two defending that foreclosure, because these banks typically hire big foreclosure mill law firms with a ton of files on their desk. But what if I told you when an HOA comes to foreclose on you? Because I made it clear to you, if you haven't paid your HOA dues, the homeowners association can come foreclose on you and take your home just like the bank can. You know, you owe them $100, they can come take your house, but these homeowners associations do not hire foreclosure mill law firms. They hire very, very talented local law firms that really specialize in HOA law. And they can come take your house way faster than a bank can. That's just the reality of the situation.
Really?
And one of those HOA lawyers, and in my opinion, the best homeowners association lawyer in town, is a man named Frank Ruggieri. And he joins me today. Frank, welcome to the program. Thanks for coming in. How are you?
Well, good morning, Justin. I'm not sure how I'm gonna justify that introduction. I'll do my best.
Well, he's the owner and founder of the Ruggieri firm. And the first question I have for you, and we have a lot of politicians on this show, and especially people running for politics. And it always comes to me, I'm like, okay, so you worked all day, and then you've got to go to these stupid events at the chamber every single night, Monday through Friday, or go hand out signs or go stand on the corner twirling your little vote for me sign. As an HOA attorney, do you find yourself having to go to these stupid HOA meetings several times a week or no?
Oh, regularly, yes.
Yeah? So, I mean, you work all day and then you've got to go to these meetings at night as well, huh?
Well, usually what I'll do, I may take a break during the day if I've got a very late meeting. No, I'm just kidding. It's just a regular part of what we do. You know, I mean, it's if you're going to get into this and you're going to represent community associations, hey, the board's getting together. You know, the homeowners are taking time out of their busy days. The board members have full-time jobs, families, many of them. So hey, if they can do it, why can't I?
I guess so. It's a lot of work. I mean, there's no doubt having to go to these board meetings is a lot of work. It takes some mental fortitude as well, I imagine, getting through some of these meetings. But, all right, homeowners associations, like little mini governments, very, very powerful boards. There's no doubt about it. Anytime, if any of you have ever had a fight with a homeowners association, you know how powerful they can be. Who gives the homeowners association their rights? Is this a statutory thing? Is it in the Constitution? I mean, where do the HOAs really get their power from?
Well, primarily, I think community associations have essentially evolved, and especially here in the state of Florida, where by our very nature, we've got smaller government. To me, community associations are effectively an extension kind of local government. They fill needs that local government can't fill or that they don't fill, maintaining common areas within the community. But primarily where they get their authority from, if you will, is the governing documents, what's referred to as the governing documents for the community. That would include the restrictive covenants, maybe what most people might refer to as deed restrictions, and then also the articles of incorporation and bylaws for the community association itself.
And all right, so a lot of people out there, maybe you retired, and you're like, well, I really want to make the grass greener in my neighborhood. Maybe I'll run for the board. Is there a certain liability if someone wants to become a board member? I mean, let's say that the board really upsets me. I'm a homeowner. I'm going to sue them. Can a board member actually be liable for lawsuits in this situation?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Now, what I always remind my board members, and I teach board member certification classes, I've been doing it for 20 years, and what I always tell my board members is, look, if you follow a couple of simple rules, you really don't need to be concerned about personal or individual liability, because a homeowners association is a corporation, and just like any other corporation, those directors are protected to a great extent by that corporate shell, if you will. So they enjoy that protection like any other corporation would. But you can face personal liability as a board member if you act in a way that's, for example, self-dealing, doing things like that where you might be benefiting yourself inappropriately. That could lead to some issues there. But so it's not a really common thing. You really have to kind of do something pretty bad to expose yourself to that kind of liability.
I hear that all the time. People will come in my office and say, look, I don't know, I'm paying $500 a month for this HOA, and I just think they're stealing the money. You must hear that sometimes, or you must hear these accusations sometimes. Have you ever seen a real case where a board member was actually stealing money?
Not a board member per se, and certainly I don't know the outcome of the situation, but I was involved in a particular community here in Central Florida where some of the players involved in the development of the community were actually charged criminally with embezzling funds from the community association.
What rights do the other homeowner? Let's say the homeowner does have suspicions about this board, and their suspicions maybe are valid, okay? What rights do they have to request to actually see the books or see what's going on financially with that board or the HOA?
That's a great question, and really that question leads to kind of the main check and balance, if you will, that I believe exists for every homeowner residing in a community with a community association. That is, hey, ask to look at the official records. Ask to look at the records that are required by statute to be maintained by the community association. That includes all of the financial records. They've got to be maintained for a certain period of time. So those records must be in place. They should be in place. And if they're not, then certainly that's going to throw up a major red flag.
Justin Clark with you on Behind the Law. With me, Bud 94.1, talking to Homeowners Association Frank Ruggieri. We're talking about HOAs. HOAs are certainly a love-hate relationship. As homeowners, if you're not on the board, there's a love-hate relationship, and there's no doubt about it. We want to have the beautiful grass in the neighborhood. We want to have the sidewalks clean and clear, but then we also don't want to be harassed either. So it's finding this happy balance of living in a community and enjoying the niceties of the community, right, but also trying to avoid the fight with the old retired guy going around taking pictures of your house and harassing you. I mean, really, that's what it's trying to find this happy balance of living in a beautiful neighborhood, but not being harassed as well. A question that I get a lot in my office, Frank, maybe you can help me with this one. So let's say I live in a condominium, right? And I live on the 3rd floor. And then there's a 4th floor above me. And the 4th floor guy, the idiot, lets his bathtub run and it overflows. And it floods my unit on the 3rd floor. People come in, they say, who do I sue? Is this the HOA's responsibility? Do I sue the guy above me? Now the 4th floor guy's saying, it's not my responsibility, it's the condo's responsibility. You must see the situation. Who wins in that I live below you and my unit got flooded debate?
Well, look, I think when you live in a condominium, what you've got to understand is that the association has responsibility for what's referred to as the common elements or common areas of the condominium, and that includes the structural portions of the building. But when you're talking about a leak type situation, which happens all the time, and I very often see them either related to an air conditioning unit, maybe that's a common one, or a water heater, that's a common one. Well, guess what? The unit owner in a condominium is responsible to maintain both of those things. If the water heater goes in a condominium, typically, in most circumstances, the unit owner is going to be responsible for that water heater. If it's the air conditioner, again, very common for the unit owner to be responsible for that. So many times in these situations where I've seen floods or even For example, with the bathtub, maybe an issue with the tub that leads to the leak. A lot of times that's going to be that upstairs unit owner's responsibility.
So the HO in that situation, is the homeowners association responsible for anything at all, really, or it all goes against the insurance company? Hopefully, they have it on the guy up top.
Well, yeah. Look, there can absolutely be liability on the part of the condominium association in situations like that, because sometimes what's referred to as the common elements might be the source of the problem. Maybe there's a maintenance issue, or maybe the association may have been aware of an issue before it got to that point and led to that leak. So,
What about the bad pipes in the wall? You know, these vinyl. I don't know what the material is.
Yeah.
but
The
it's-
crappy pipe.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that
that's
one. The
it.
crappy pipe, Frank. Well, how about those?
Yeah,
I just wanted to officialize things
I
for
ran into
Mick.
that
I'm trying to
about
help Mick
25,
here.
30 years
Yeah.
ago at a condo, and actually I had to just, the pipes are the responsibility of the homeowners. However, repairing the wall is another thing. That's me.
Right.
I had to pay all that.
yeah, no, and a lot of times in condominiums in particular, these issues of maintenance or who's responsible to repair certain things, they can become muddy, and sometimes, or many times, both the unit owner and the condominium association can have a responsibility. So, for example, in Mick's situation, where he had a flood that was caused by
By bad pipes.
a pipe that was his responsibility, but the drywall was damaged, and maybe that was the association's responsibility. I don't know.
No, I think it was the other way around.
Oh, the other way around. Okay. Well, in a situation like that, let's just say that a pipe leaks and there's really no evidence of negligence. It just happens. Sometimes it just happens. You get a pipe leak, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, bad material. Yeah.
In a situation like that, nobody's really at fault there. The association's going to have to fix the pipe. That's their responsibility. That's the common element. But the drywall, in your situation, Mick, fell on you. And maybe you were even negligent and you just didn't admit it or something. But
Oh, I couldn't do that. No, I wouldn't be doing that.
but and then Mick would be responsible to fix the drywall in that situation.
The homeowners association that you live in is saying that you owe them $500, and now the $500 is $5,000. What are your options when that amount explodes on you? Right on the other side of this break, Justin Clark with you, Bud 94.1. Welcome back to the program. Justin Clark with you on Behind the Law. I'm Bud 94.1 321-282-1055 www.youhavepower.com. You can watch the show live on social media at ATTY Justin Clark. We're talking to my good friend and probably one of the best homeowners association attorneys in town. And when I say HOA attorneys, I don't mean representing the consumer. I mean representing the actual associations themselves.
The bad guys.
Well, it depends on what room you're in, I guess. But
I'm only half kidding.
but we really wanted to get in the brain of the HOA, and see what's really going on, because I know a lot of you have had problems with your homeowners association before. We know that. I hear about it all the time. So I really wanted to hear Frank's perspective from their side as well. And this is something that does happen a lot, Frank, and you see it. So someone maybe says, look, I paid my HOA due last quarter, $300, and I pay $300 a quarter for my homeowners association dues. And I paid it, but the HOA is still saying I owe it. And now instead of $300, I owe $3,000. This is something I see in my office all the time. How much can they legally charge on penalties, interest, that sort of thing? Do you know what's legal? How much can they really charge me if I get behind, or they say I'm behind?
Right. Well, let's start with interest.
Right.
By statute, if the documents are silent, if the governing documents, remember I mentioned that in the beginning, the governing documents that establish the community and give the association its authority, if those documents don't address how much interest the association can charge, by law they can charge up to 18%. So you've got to be concerned with the interest they're accumulating. Now, second, late fees. Certainly, I would encourage homeowners that might be in the situation to take a look at whether the documents even permit late fees, because they don't. Not all of them do. So you've got to be mindful of that. So that can accumulate as well, and that can add up. So And the way that a payment might be applied, that's another way, Justin, that I see where maybe some homeowners get into trouble is the statute says we apply payments a certain way. So if you make a payment after the accounts become delinquent, it's going to get applied to the interest and the late fees first. Well, that means the assessments are last, and now more interest and late fees are accumulating on top of those that are coming due after. So it can kind of snowball into a bad situation there.
Yeah, and it happens quickly. And again, if you don't pay the HOA dues, they can foreclose on you just like a bank, but they foreclose on you faster because they use talented local attorneys like Frank Ruggieri to come essentially, foreclose on you. I mean, that's the way you guys get paid. And here's a little secret, and a lot of people don't know this. So there's this whole vulture scheme of investors out there. And all they do is go around from courthouse to courthouse buying up HOA foreclosures, right? I mean, there's a whole group of investors that all they do is go around looking to buy HOA foreclosures. It doesn't matter if there's a mortgage or what. It doesn't matter, because what they try to do is they pay 10 grand, 20 grand, 30 grand, or whatever it is, to where the HOA gets paid off. Now the investor owns the property, kicks out the homeowner, and then rents the property until the bank comes and forecloses. So it's even better if you're current on your mortgage, because they kick you out, and now it's going to take the mortgage company 3 years to actually foreclose. Now I'm going to rent the house for 3 years, make up the money from the HOA foreclosure sale. There's a whole group of investors that do this.
Yeah.
I mean, if your I can almost guarantee you, if your HOA forecloses on you, there's going to be a third party come in and bid on this property, and they're going to get it, and they're going to kick you out. Whereas if the bank forecloses on you, it goes back to the bank, for $100. But if the HOA forecloses on you, it's going to happen faster, and a third party is going to buy it, and a third party is going to kick you out. No doubt about it. I mean, that's just how it works, right? And it's got to be sad from your perspective when you see this, because for some people, when you have to foreclose on them, it's not sad for you. But for some people, when you see that something just weird happened, it's got to make you feel not great, I guess, right? I mean, how do you handle that emotionally, and how do you actually deal with the homeowner when you get to that situation?
Look, unfortunately, I've had to deal with some situations that were extremely unpleasant. I had a situation one time with an elderly woman that was suffering from Alzheimer's, and the family wasn't very close to her, and had a situation there. And when we got to the end of that process, I spoke to the family members and certainly could not give them legal advice, obviously, but I certainly laid out the reality of the situation and kind of gave them some nuts and bolts of what they could expect and what the process entails and how they might be able to address it and straighten the situation out, and they did. So, unfortunately, I've seen situations like that are extremely unfortunate.
It seems to me there are three people driving the train or having the possibility of driving the train from the HOA perspective. We've got the board, but it seems like most of the time we have a management company as well, and then we have the law firm.
That's the
I mean, what percentage of these HOAs have a management company who's actually driving the train, would you say?
Ooh,
it doesn't have to be an exact number.
Right.
Is it like half and half, or is it like the vast majority of them have a management company?
Oh, I would say it's closer to 75-80%.
Have a management company.
The good bulk of them do, yes.
So then when there's a management company involved, is it really the management company typically driving the train making the decision, or is it actually Joe homeowner who ran for president?
Look, the board is going to rely on the management company to take kind of the weight off their shoulders and handle the bulk of the responsibilities. The board members have full-time jobs and families, et cetera. So that's why they retain the management company primarily to begin with. But ultimately, the board's got to develop those policies. And most management companies that I work with, they're very big on having the board adopt policies that tell them what to do in situations where a homeowner's delinquent or not maintaining the property and things like that. So.
And they don't, the documents don't always address that, because at that time they didn't know if they were going to have a management company or not. So, so you got to kind of like mend them together.
Yeah, no, and that's why, you mentioned that, Mick. That's true. A lot of the documents don't properly anticipate everything that a homeowners association is going to have to deal with. So those policies and things that the board has to put in place are important.
Right?
Yeah.
You got to keep it updated.
That's right.
Yeah, I know. How often would you say that in a foreclosure case, if you guys have to foreclose on a homeowner, that a third-party investor really does, like I was talking about earlier, really does come in and buy the place? It's a lot, right?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that, Justin, because not only are you correct, but that problem has actually gotten worse. If you want to call it that, that's, or at least maybe to say it this way, it's become more common. I would actually say in situations that I've seen over the years, and especially over the last 5 to 6 years since the foreclosure crisis got worse and started to unwind, I would say probably 50%.
Yeah.
50% will end up going to investors. And it's funny. I mean, I recognize some of these names. You know, something LLC and whatnot, and you know they're over in Tampa, they're over in Brevard County, and yeah.
My current board has gone rogue, right? I think that they have mental health issues because
that
this board
doesn't
is so
happen,
this
Justin, I'm
board
sorry.
is so stupid. And I'm not talking about me really, but we all want to rise up because we hate this board, right? And all the homeowners have banded together, and now we want to do something. If a board really does go crazy and haywire, do the other homeowners have an option? I mean, can they set a vote? I mean, what are the options for homeowners when they really do have a board that's doing crazy things?
Look, I always say that the best option for homeowners is the political solution. It's the solution to the problem in a situation like that is always to get the voice of the community heard on the board. If the board members are not properly representing the sentiment of the community and what the community believes is important, then it's incumbent upon the homeowners to take control of that situation and change the composition of the board. Every homeowners association by statute and condominium association must have an annual meeting every year. That's where that election is going to take place. So find out about that, get information. Don't just throw that letter away from the association. Find out when the meeting's going to be, attend the meeting, get involved, get on the board.
So is it always once a year for these meetings or the voting for the board? Do they have to do it once a year?
Yes, they're required to have an annual meeting.
And could you have a special vote? I mean, anything's possible, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to, maybe give Justin too much ammunition here, but look, there is a method in the statute to recall board members, so you can pursue that process of recalling.
But that's going to cost you money.
No, not really, Mick.
Really?
No, I mean, homeowners, the statute talks about how to conduct a recall. So that process is out there. Now, look, it takes a majority of the community to make that happen, as it rightly should, in my humble opinion. But there's a process in place there. So that's not something you don't even have to wait for the annual meeting.
What comprises a board? I mean, does a board have to have a president, a treasurer, et cetera, et cetera? I mean, are there certain offices that have to be there?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we've got to have a president, treasurer, secretary. So you've got to have those principal offices or officers, if you will, in place. Yes.
All right, let's talk about estoppel fees for a minute. I get complaints on this all the time, too. So if you ever go buy a house, guys, and you go to the title company and they say, okay, we got everything we need here except the estoppel from the HOA, and they want $1,000. The estoppel essentially is something from the homeowners association saying that the prior owner is all good. You know, they're current on their fees and there are no issues. You got to get the HOA estoppel. But it seems to me that there are places, some homeowners associations that I've seen, for number one, hold up a closing and take way, way too long to get us out of estoppel, or two, charge an absurd amount of money. Are there any rules on what you can charge and how long they have to get us that estoppel?
Absolutely, yeah. No, and that's a great point, Justin. Just got the new statute adopted, I want to say a year or two ago, on estoppel certificates. So now we've got a statute that specifically addresses these estoppel certificates for condominium associations, for homeowners associations, for cooperative associations. There is a statutory scheme in place there that provides for a level of what those fees can be, and they cannot exceed that. They can be higher if the homeowner's delinquent, and they can also be higher if you need it on a rush basis, which is defined as 3 days or less. So the association can charge more, but again, there's a schedule of those fees in the statute now, and there's also a time frame. So it's got to be provided within 10 days of receipt of the request.
Gotcha.
You know, Justin, I thought estoppel was a line of clothing.
Yeah, I think it is too.
You know, I've never
Only
heard that
lawyers
word,
wear
actually.
estoppel?
Estoppel, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason for you to unless you had to go through 3 years of law school. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I didn't do that.
Speaking of law school, people think that as lawyers we sort of specialize in an area of law in law school, but what I find is most lawyers sort of fall into what they fall into. I don't, it's rare I see someone say, "Oh, I'm gonna be the HOA lawyer when I get out of school." We kind of fall into it. How did you become involved in representing homeowners associations?
Right. Well, now, when I first got out of law school, I I guess you could say that I was kind of in the personal injury realm. I did it on the plaintiff side a little bit. I did it on the defense side some. Just found out that it really wasn't my cup of tea. So I started looking for a position with a firm that did maybe real estate, commercial law, some different things like that. And got an opportunity with a firm that specializes in community associations. Found out that it's really more corporate and real estate law. That's really what it's about.
Yep.
And got that opportunity. And first time I went to a meeting, I have a great time. That's really what I enjoy most is going to those meetings. I love it.
You want to put a shed in your backyard and you want to paint your house this weekend. Do you need approval from your homeowners association? Right on the other side of this break, Justin Clark with you on Bud 94.1. Welcome back for another half hour of Behind the Law with me, attorney Justin Clark, on Bud 94.1. Any legal question that you may have, 321-282-1055. The website, www.youhavepower.com. You can watch the show live on Facebook or any social media platform at ATTY. Justin Clark joining me, as always, my good friend, and Orlando radio legend Mick Dolan. Every time we have a guest in here, they always say, man, I've been listening to you for years. They have, right? I like that. Everybody knows Mick Dolan. Skid, you found that? Skid's here
Yeah,
too.
because they always say, "Who are you, Skid?"
No, they don't.
That's not even
and they
right.
just look right at Mick. They're like, "Oh, Mick." I'm like, "Yeah, it's okay. I'll be over here in the back."
He's just lovable, isn't
Yes,
he,
he
Skid?
certainly is. He really is.
He's just a lovable man.
I've never been called lovable.
No?
Sorry.
Not by any
Not
of your
even
mates.
by my wife. No.
Yeah, anyway, so a good friend of mine's joining us today. He's a homeowners association attorney. He represents your homeowners association. His name is Frank Ruggieri, the Ruggieri Law Firm. How do people reach out to you? If I'm, let's say I'm on a board or I'm a management company, I want to reach out and have questions for you, or I want to consider changing attorneys. How do I find out more information about you?
Oh, well, absolutely. Well, I'd say the best way, as with many businesses nowadays, is our website that you can find us at www.ruggierilawfirm.com. We've got offices in Orlando and in Melbourne, and hopefully more soon. But that's probably the best way is our website.
So a question we get all the time here on the show is, I painted my house the other day, and all of a sudden I got a nasty gram from the president of the HOA telling me I need to repaint said house.
Whoops.
What is an ARB board, or whatever they're called? I call them ARB boards. There's probably a more fancy name for them. And what do you have to do as a homeowner to get approval to do things like paint or construction or additions or a shed in the back? What do I need to do to get permission?
Right. Well, in most communities, Justin, it's a simple application process. And more nowadays, too, going electronic and websites and whatnot. A lot of community associations, homeowners associations, they have their own websites, and you can obtain those architectural review forms a lot of times from the community's website, or contact information a lot of times is available for the management company that manages the community, and get that application that way. But it's usually a simple application process.
In the case of painting, it's an arbitrary thing. All right, that color might look good to you and maybe other people, but the homeowner, one guy just decides, oh, man, I don't know about that. So now what do you do?
Well,
I mean, can you, hey, this purple is not that bad. You
Right.
know what I'm saying?
Well, look, certainly, Mick, it's really not a good idea for a homeowners association to rely on kind of the individual judgment of just the architectural review committee.
Yeah, but that happens all the time. I'm sorry. It does.
Many times what you'll see, though, and what I recommend that my clients do is adopt guidelines. So, for example, let's just take colors. Many communities have a palette of pre-approved colors, and the homeowner wants to paint something, and they go in and
as long as they pick that color, they're okay.
That's exactly
They
right.
don't have to get permission because it's in there. It's like that color is there.
Well, it depends. I don't want to give people bad guidance on that, but
okay.
you still may have to apply.
Okay.
Even, especially if I'm the association's attorney, Mick. But
I have
got
I have a case now where my client built an addition, and the addition cost $80,000, and it's a beautiful addition. You're not involved in the case, I promise. And they are absolutely they are absolutely. I kind of wish you were. They are absolutely forcing my client to remove the addition because they did not get permission from the ARB board prior to putting up. And then the argument from my client is always, that one has that addition, that one has that addition, that one has same exact addition, but you're picking on me. And it also leads to the age-old question as well. Well, I have a dog. Well, I know dogs aren't allowed in the community, but she has a dog, he has a dog, she has a dog, but you're picking on me. So it's this selective enforcement thing. Help us understand why I feel like the HOA is picking on me when my neighbor has the same addition or my neighbor has the same size dog. How does that work in the HOA world?
Well, I mean, what homeowners have to understand in these situations, Justin, is a lot of times if you do see other properties in the community that may have a similar modification to what you would like to put in, and you're upset that the association's pursuing you, it may very well be the case that they're also pursuing those other homeowners, and you just don't know. And especially depending on where they are, they might be in the process. So don't rush to judgment or think right away that they're not taking action as to those other homeowners. That's number one. And they may be very early on in the process. You wouldn't have any kind of lawsuit that you could see in the public records or anything. So that could certainly be the case. But sometimes you're right. I mean, it may be a situation where they may not be picking on it, but maybe they just don't know. They're not aware of that other property. That might be another issue, another explanation, if you will.
So you could get your neighbors in trouble all over.
That's exactly right, and you probably should, Nick.
An honest lawyer. I gotta love that.
Have you ever seen a homeowners association just legit run out of money? Like, we just don't have any money left?
Oh, absolutely. I had one community in particular. It was a condominium, Justin, and as you know, condominiums can they have to have reserves to save money for large expenditures, replacing things,
Hurricane
doing
damage,
roofs and things like that. And I had a community that kept waiving these reserves every year, so they were not saving that money. Well, they kept doing it for over a decade, and eventually, they ended up in bankruptcy. Yes.
And how
so
do they?
Then what happens? Then your HOA goes bankrupt.
That's right.
Then so now what?
Well,
your grass gets really high.
Hey, local government might not like me saying this, Mick, but to be honest with you, what typically happens, what may happen in situations like this, where you just have a community that goes bankrupt. We've got one in particular that's been on the news a lot. And sometimes the county and local government may have to step in and take on the responsibility of some of those responsibilities that the association used to take care of.
Wow.
Behind the Law with me, attorney Justin Clark on Bud 94.1. We're talking to Homeowners Association attorney Frank Ruggieri. He represents homeowners associations throughout Central Florida, and we're trying to get some down low from him on what's really going on behind the scenes with these people driving around taking pictures of your house.
They have good cameras.
But so one of the things that really upsets people often is the nasty word of assessment. Right?
Right.
So I'm paying my HOA fee every month. It's $400 a month. That should be plenty. Now all of a sudden I get this letter saying I owe $4,000. Explain this assessment process. How does an HOA determine how much to assess? What's it for? I mean, there's got to be a process for this. Is it just an arbitrary number they throw out? They want $4,000 from me? How does it work?
Right. Well, look, I think it might be helpful for folks to maybe think of it. It's kind of like taxes. It's kind of like property taxes or taxes that we pay to the federal government. That association has certain responsibilities that it's got to take care of. I mean, if you look at, again, going back to the governing documents for the community, the association has certain responsibilities. It's got to maintain common areas and do other things. So it's got to have a way to fund those responsibilities, and they do it through assessments. Now, how do they come up with that number? No, it shouldn't be arbitrary. Again, going back to what I mentioned about asking to look at those official records. The budgets for the community are going to be in those official records, so take a look at them. That's where those numbers are coming from. That's how the association determines, hey, we need X amount to pay our bills every year, and you divide that up amongst our 100 or whatever homeowners we got, and there's your assessment.
hurricane damage. So we had a big hurricane come through here, 6-7 months ago? I have no idea. It's been a while now, huh?
It was last summer, yeah.
Yeah, last summer.
Don't remind me.
It worked out well for me. You guys had more trouble than I did.
Yeah.
Oh, buddy.
It was you had no AC in here for like a week. I remember.
We didn't have
in the
electric
studio.
here for
Oh yeah,
it was awful.
always great doing radio with no electricity in the middle of the
In the
summer.
dark.
Sure. You got to talk loud.
A radio station with no electricity.
Yeah.
That's always good.
Yeah, it was great.
Breaker 19.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know how do you communicate
Yeah,
with the public when you don't have
we went
electricity.
all CB on you. Talking like trucker talk.
So anyway, so you have a hurricane roll through a community, right? This is not let's say it's not a condominium community, but it's a homes, right? These are single family residential homes. The hurricane just sort of trashes the community. Most of the houses survive. There's some roof damage, but the fences, the community fences are all screwed up. The playground is screwed up. The HOAs have insurance for this type of situation. Are you going to assess me as a homeowner?
Well, look, they should have insurance. Sometimes I guess there could be situations, I haven't seen many, but there can be situations where a community simply doesn't have insurance. Or maybe even worse, maybe they're not actively managed or whatnot, and they miss the deadline, and all of a sudden the policy expires and they don't even know it and they don't have coverage. So I've seen it happen. But yes, most homeowners associations, most community associations do have insurance that would insure the common areas and protect against those kinds of damages.
But are they required to have it? Yes, that's the question.
Well, yes, they technically they are.
Sort
Yes.
of.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, so it's a condominium complex that I live in now. I've downgraded from my single-family home. Now I live in a condo complex. It's 20 stories tall, let's say. Hurricane comes through, blows my doors in, right? How do we determine what's my responsibility versus what the homeowners association responsibility is?
Right. Well, when we're talking about a condominium, again, I'm going to use that phrase again, the governing documents. Take a look at those documents. Take a look at the declaration, what's called the Declaration of Condominium. That's where you're going to see what I call the unit boundaries. And that's going to talk about, hey, what are literally the physical boundaries of my condominium unit, typically the unfinished drywall and flooring and ceiling inwards, your inner living space essentially. And typically the association, the common elements is everything outside of that, the load-bearing walls, the roofs, et cetera.
Well, no, back to the apartment, your responsibility. What about the windows and the door?
A lot of times in a condominium, excellent question, Mick. A lot of times in a condominium, the doors and windows will be unit owner responsibility, but that can be dictated by the individual set of documents in the condominium that you're dealing with.
Wow.
You have fallen behind on your HOA dues, and you're getting letters from the HOA or from their lawyer. What is the best way to resolve your past due homeowners association dues? One more segment ahead. Justin Clark with you, Behind the Law, Bud 94.1. One more segment ahead. Thank you for joining me. I hope you have a fantastic weekend in store. My name is Justin Clark. If you have any legal questions whatsoever, the phone number 321-282-1055. The website www.youhavepower.com. Joining me is Frank Ruggieri from the Ruggieri Law Firm. He represents HOAs across Florida. I mean, he's kind of on the other side. I mean, we're sharing a room here, but he's a great guy, and I enjoy working with him, but we're clearly on the other side of the table. I understand that.
He's not armed.
I hope we haven't been too rough on you today, by any means. You kind of came into our house, but we're trying to be nice, right?
Well, I mean, once I got the potato sack off my head that you guys put on me when I walked in the door, Justin, and then the oranges, the bags of oranges.
It was for your own safety.
Like I said earlier in the show, most people, it strikes me that most people don't understand if you don't pay your homeowners association, they can come foreclose on your home just like Bank of America can. But they can come foreclose on your home faster than Bank of America can, and it's always going to go to most of the time it's going to go to a third-party investor who's going to buy it, and they're going to kick you out of your house immediately. So be very, very, very careful when it comes to paying HOA dues. When someone comes in my office and they're doing very poorly financially, it goes like this. Make sure your family has food. Make sure your HOA is paid. Those are the two people I want to pay first because the HOA has more power and they're going to come take your house faster than Bank of America. Always pay the HOA before you pay Bank of America. That's just the reality of the situation.
Really?
Eat, food, HOA second. Seriously, it's like that. But many times people will come in my office and say, look, we had some kind of dispute, and now the homeowners association is saying I owe $1,000. And then we have penalties and we have interest, and then they have to start adding the attorney's fees to it as well. So $300 very quickly becomes $3,000. $3,000 very quickly becomes $10,000. I mean, it really adds up quickly. I mean, I know you guys have to get paid, and they have to get paid by the person who's not paying them, okay? So they add up quickly, and they always say, well, what should I do? I don't have $10,000 to pay. So, I mean, one of the things I will say, and if it's already gone to a law firm, right? I will say, look, maybe shoot an email to the law firm or to the paralegal who sent you a letter and just say, look, I'm struggling. Yeah, I know you're saying I owe $10,000. I mean, what kind of options do I have? Because, I mean, you guys are busy too. I mean, you get a lot of phone calls from disgruntled homeowners. What do you find the most effective way when someone doesn't have a lawyer, when they just reach out directly to you to try to resolve the debt? What's the most effective way to get to you guys?
Look, we're very responsive. I take what we do very, very seriously, and my obligation is to the entire community. It's not to a board of directors. It's to every homeowner in that community. I'm representing all of those homeowners, and I want to work with those homeowners. So we have email information in all of our correspondence. We have it on our website. We have phone numbers, obviously, for the office where you can reach us. It doesn't matter. I mean, shoot an email. Email is certainly very effective, and it's quick.
What are typical? All right, so a lot of people don't. Most people don't have $10,000 sitting around if they get behind. They just don't. I mean, I think the vast majority of people, even at retirement, only have like 10 or 20 grand in their bank account. So people, generally speaking, don't have $10,000 to just stroke a check to the HOA for whatever reason they got behind. What sort of payment options will an HOA generally allow to bring someone current? And I know it varies. I'm just trying to get an idea for people out there listening.
Look, the number one thing that I want to encourage people, Justin, with when it comes to a delinquency, okay, because that's kind of maybe the most common issue, right, that we run into with homeowners and homeowners associations. Get on top of the problem early. It doesn't matter that you're not in a position, perhaps financially, but we've all been there. We've all been in financial situations. You know, me with student loans when I got out of law school. The important part, reach out to the association, go to the board meeting, talk to the board early. Don't ignore those early letters that you get from the management company before it gets to the law firm, because that's when things are really going to start adding up. Yeah. So I encourage homeowners to reach out quickly. Don't ignore those letters. Reach out early. And most of my clients are very open to payment plans and settlements that provide for a time to repay the debt. So, I see very common, maybe a year, up to a year, 12 months. That's kind of a common time frame.
All right, so the HOA is saying I owe them money, okay? So I'm getting a letter from the homeowners association, but then I call my neighbor who's on the board, and he says I need to call Janice from Century Management.
Right.
Am I talking to the management company? Am I talking to the HOA? I mean, who am I really dealing with here normally?
Okay. Well,
before it gets to the law firm, I've got a management company, and I have a board, and I've got a treasurer, and I have the president, then I have also the person at the front gate. I mean, who do I really talk to try to resolve this thing?
Right. In most instances, like we said early on, the vast majority of the communities that I represent have professional management. They have management companies. And the association is going to have contact information, through the association itself, through their websites. find out what that is. In most instances, though, it's the management company before it gets to my office. So that's
they're
going
the
to be
ones that you need to go to.
Yes, and a lot of look. Those managers, I work with them and have been working with them for 20 years. They are responsive. Send them an email if it's not gotten to the point where it's been turned over to legal counsel. The management company will be very responsive. They'll get back to you and work with you on getting something worked out.
Bankruptcy is a tool we have to use sometimes to deal with homeowners associations. And like I've told you before, if you do file Chapter 13, you can pay them over time, pay them over 5 years, but the HOA is going to get paid, but over 5 years. Now, if the first mortgage is underwater, we can oftentimes strip, and he doesn't want to hear this, but we can strip away the HOA fees through the Chapter 13 bankruptcy if you can prove that your first mortgage is underwater. But here's the question for you. So there was a time, guys, for about a 2-year little period where, for whatever reason, we had some weird case only in this district for bankruptcy. Nationwide, you couldn't do it, but where you could strip away a second mortgage in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, which is the really easy, boom, boom, boom bankruptcy. Oh. We all knew it was going to go away, but there was like a 2-year period where you could strip away a second mortgage, which really includes a homeowners association lien in a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. When that case first came out, my friends who were working for HOAs were like, dude, I mean, what is going on here? I mean, was that a kind of a scary time when that was going on, where the HOAs a little bit nervous? I mean, it was a crazy case, and we all knew it wasn't going to last forever, but I mean, that was kind of a big deal for HOAs, right?
Yeah, now look, I certainly, it might not seem that way, but I absolutely sympathize with the situations of those individual homeowners. At the same time, look, the community's got bills to pay. They've got responsibilities. They've got things that they've got to take care of. So when you've got that situation like that where the association is facing the potential of just losing out completely on collecting that amount, yeah, it's absolutely was not a fun time.
Did you find, did you actually see the bottom line on some of these HOAs really be affected by that law? Or no?
Probably not significantly, because I think most homeowners are very, very hesitant to take that final step of going through bankruptcy.
Yeah, gotcha. It was a crazy time. I mean, I don't know.
I didn't even hear about that.
But it was only here, really. It was only in this sort of district for bankruptcy. Across the country, you never could do it. It was pretty well settled that you couldn't strip a second mortgage in a Chapter 7, but then we had this case come through where you could. That is not the law of the land now. You cannot strip a second mortgage or a lien by filing a Chapter 7 bankruptcy. You can in a 13, but certainly not in a Chapter 7. Craziest things. You must have seen some real drama. I mean, you must have seen some real drama with these HOAs. I mean, who's normally the more emotionally charged person here? Is it the homeowner? Is it the people on the board? Is it the management company? Who do you really see the most emotional charge out of?
Look, I think in most instances it's going to be the homeowner, at least initially. But you've got to understand, there's a misconception. I call it kind of the apartment complex mentality almost, where many homeowners see the association as kind of this management thing that's out there. They're like as if they own all of the homes and they're renting them out. That's not the case. I mean, those are your neighbors. So a lot of times I kind of see equal emotion on both sides, and board members being upset that the homeowner is putting them through this and showing up at their meetings and yelling at them and things like that.
When being a thorn in the side.
They don't feel that that's fair. I mean, they've got their own perspective on it.
If let's say I'm a pissed off homeowner and I go to one of these meetings, do I have a right to talk? Does everyone have a right to say something, or do I have to get on the agenda? How does that work?
Well, as long as I'm not present.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. I understood.
No, I'm kidding. No, absolutely, yes. All homeowners have a right to address what are called the items on the agenda. So, in other words, what's the outline of issues that the board's going to address that night? What's on their agenda that night? You've got a right to address each of those items that's on there.
And do most of these HOAs have a monthly meeting? Is it just once a year? What's the typical amount of meetings they have per year?
Most homeowners associations and condominium associations meet monthly.
Okay.
The next most common is quarterly, and unfortunately I've got a couple that try to push it out beyond that and only meet twice a year or once a year, and that's not good.
So I'll be totally honest with you here. I have like a life and stuff, so I haven't been to one of these meetings before. Never. I've owned plenty of places at HOA, within HOA. I've literally never been to a meeting. What goes on? Tell me what really goes on at this. So everyone sits down. My vision is like these little, very uncomfortable folding chairs. You know what I mean? The aluminum folding chairs. You
Like
get them
in a
all
school
out.
classroom
And
or
everyone's
something.
like there, and we got these buddies over here. We got this clique over here. We're all sitting on. What really describe one of these meetings? What room do they take place in, and how do they really go?
Well, look, that's kind of funny, Justin. It's almost a little bit of a.
I was right?
Entertaining part of what I do as
Okay.
far as. Because, look, I've done these meetings everywhere from the employee lounge of a Publix to a library or some other place like that. So you're talking about a nice wide variety. But
Out by the pool, maybe.
yeah, exactly. Look, it's a lot
Twin
of
Peaks.
Yeah, there you go. There you go.
no. A lot of times it's a community facility. It's a clubhouse. Sometimes it can be a board member's home. But there's a lot of local facilities, public libraries, things like that will make their churches, that will make their rooms available for a homeowners association.
All right, so we all get there, and then we have the board like up on a pedestal here with their own table, and then everyone else is in the uncomfortable chairs. How does it work?
Well, a lot of times if I'm at the meeting, I'll have the homeowners shackled. No,
Good.
no. I mean, it's very informal. I mean, you may have an area where the board is sitting. Sometimes they'll have maybe a table, but I tell my boards too, you've got to be careful with that, okay? Because if you're setting up a table and then you've got the board members that are sitting behind the table and everybody's over here, you're kind of creating separation between the homeowners and the board that.
Because you're supposed to be just members of the community.
That's
all of
exactly
it.
right. Yeah. So I encourage my boards to try to sit with the homeowners like that to the extent that they can.
All right, so then we sit down. The president says call to order or something like that, and
Right.
then we have an agenda we go through. We go through a budget. What do we go through with these meetings?
Well, look, I mean, it's a business meeting, and as I always tell folks in my board member certification classes, homeowners association, a condominium association, it's not a garden club. It's a business. It's a corporation like any other. It's a not-for-profit corporation. It's got to file tax returns every year, so it's a business. When you go to the meeting, you've got to go through those formalities. Did we notice the meeting properly? Do what's called establishing that the meeting was properly noticed. Proof of notice. Establish that we've got enough folks there, whether it's a board meeting or a membership meeting. What's called a quorum. Do we have a quorum present so that we can call the meeting to order? And then we move into the agenda items, which is all the different issues that the board might want to address. So, for example, pursuing you, Justin, for a violation of the covenants.
Exactly right. running around naked again.
That
Nah,
might
I've
get you
never
in
done
trouble.
that.
No.
Well, Frank Ruggieri, I really appreciate you coming here. He's the preeminent HOA attorney in town. More information about you they can find where?
www.ruggierilawfirm.com.
Thanks for being here, my man.
Thanks for having me, as always.
For Mick Dolan, that's Skid from our next door neighbor, 1031 The Wolf. My name is Justin Clark, and Mick, I don't know much, but I do know one little thing.
What's that?
I will see you right back here next Saturday on Bud 94.1.